How would you like to bypass years of self-development, therapy, or psychology and get right down to the root cause of what's happening in your life and change it? Well, I'm going to share the fundamentals on today's video for you, and it's actually a core piece of my new program that I'm calling U 2.0. So there are two main areas we're going to be focusing on today's video. And the first has to do with your thoughts, and the second has to do with your emotions. And if you master both of these, you are going to master your life and your destiny. And you are going to understand to the deepest level on how your life works and operates, and how to actually change it for yourself and change your core programming. So your thoughts are actually dictating the results you're getting. And I talk about this more deeply in another video that I call the daily shift. And I'll put a link to that video here for you so you could tap into that in case you missed it. But in a nutshell, this is what it looks like. You're having thoughts that cause you to feel a certain way. And how you feel motivates you into taking action. And every action you take produces a result. And every result you get in your life perpetuates and reinforces your circumstances. So there's this big loop that's occurring in your life of thoughts lead to emotions, lead to actions, lead to results, lead to circumstances, and it keeps going round and round. And depending on if the thought is positive or negative will depend on the outcome of the result. In other words, if the thought is positive, you'll get a positive result leading to a positive circumstance, and it'll keep going round and round. If it's a negative thought, it'll lead to a negative result, which will lead to a negative circumstance, and the loop will continue. And in the daily shift video that I share, I teach you a simple 3-step process on how to shift your state of being actually. So number one, you become aware of the state of being you're in. And if it's negative, like if it's in survival mode or fear or anxiety mode, then you simply push the pause button on life, you belly box breathe to reset yourself. And once you calm and relax that emotion that you're feeling and you let go of it in the present moment, then you look at the thought that you were having that caused you to feel that way. And now you can choose a better serving thought moving forward. And that's the daily shift that you can do on a regular basis. Well, we're going to go 10 times deeper for you here on today's video, so stay with me here. So the main idea that I'm going to share with you on today's video is that you are not your thoughts and you are not your emotions. You are having thoughts and you are having emotions. In fact, how it works is every thought you think gets processed on the screen of your imagination. And literally, whether you're thinking about the water right in front of you, or you're thinking about a memory from 30 years ago, or you're thinking about the future and what you're going to be doing in the next week, month, or year, whatever thought is coming up and being conjured up on your screen of your mind is just simply being processed on the screen of your mind. And whether your eyes are opened or closed, this is actually how you're processing and creating your life and future here. And so whatever has your attention, in other words, whatever's on the screen of your mind most often is what is being created in your future here. So it's a really good idea to start paying attention to what you're processing on the screen of your mind. But understand, and it's a very important delineation, that you are not your thoughts. You're the observer having thoughts. In other words, there's a choice that you can make of what thought you're going to be thinking. And that's what we're going to get into a little bit deeper on today's video for you. So if you're having negative thoughts of I'm not good enough, I can't do this because of whatever, I have a disease, I never have enough money, whatever the thought is that's leading to the result that you're seeing in your life, we're going to start to challenge the hell out of it through this little process I'm going to teach you. So the first level of this is starting to become aware of the thoughts that you're habitually thinking. Because the thoughts you think most often become a habit and a way of thinking, and the thoughts that you feel most powerfully about start to become beliefs in your mind. In other words, the more strongly you feel about something, the more of a belief is forming in your mind. Well, you keep going, and the more strongly you feel about a thought, it goes from a habitual way of thinking into a belief, and now it becomes a core belief. In other words, something you believe deep down to your core is now starting to fuse with your identity. Well, at the very lowest level of this are your values. So these thoughts that we've been thinking and processing on the screen of our mind for most of our life, literally maybe for the past 30, 40, 50, 60 years for you, you have been developing values, the thoughts and ideas that mean the most to you and you prioritize the most. Well, if you reverse engineer what's happening, every result you have currently is in complete alignment with the values you hold. So in other words, if you're struggling in any area of your life, it's 100% of the time going to be related to the value you hold in that area. So for example, if you're really struggling to make money, then it's likely you don't hold money as a high enough value. And it's quite likely you're valuing other things, maybe like family and being a nice person and not wanting to hurt other people or sell people on things. You have a conflict of values, in other words, around money. and it's preventing you from creating more money in your life. The same thing may be true with your health. You may not be prioritizing your health and valuing it until there's a problem or a disease in your body. And now your health values, once you get a disease, start to increase and motivate you into taking action because now it's more important to you in your life. Your values are dictating the priority and the importance of anything in your life. So right off the bat, before we go any deeper in this video, you could do a quick check-in and say, all right, well, what are my values? And what am I prioritizing? In other words, what's most important to me? And then what are my core beliefs that I believe for myself? And those are going to be in direct relation and correlation to the results you're getting in your life. So if you don't like certain results you're getting in your life, you have to start challenging and shifting your values and your core beliefs. So now the idea is you're starting to understand that different thoughts carry a different energy or weight with them, right? The thoughts that mean more to you, in other words, carry more energy and weight. And we're habitual machines. So it takes about 21 days of thinking a new thought before it actually starts to form as a neural pathway in your brain. So that's why habits take so long to form, because new thoughts are going to be firing, but they won't wire together until about 21 days of thinking that thought enough. So that's why change is so hard, because you already have hardwired neural pathways for thoughts to easily travel on. In other words, they're like roads that the thought can easily travel on. And if you have an abundance neural pathway, then thoughts of abundance can travel on it, right? And thoughts of poverty don't belong on that neural pathway road of abundance. And so you're not going to be having thoughts of poverty. The same is true if you are having lackful poverty thoughts, and that's a road that's already a neural pathway in your brain. Well, now poverty thoughts and lackful thoughts easily travel on that road and over that neural pathway. And abundance thoughts and wealthy thoughts are not traveling on that road. All these ideas kind of come together with this understanding. Well, we're going to go even deeper with what's actually keeping you stuck. Because it's not just the thoughts you're having. There's another piece of the puzzle that it's important to understand what's happening, and that's the emotional piece. Emotions are energy in motion, and that's what we're going to get into in this next phase of the video here for you. We have emotional cords that tie us together with every moment in time that we've been living. And like a movie that's been playing your whole life, you have trillions of moments that you've experienced throughout your life. Well, every moment has a unique emotional cord tied to it. In other words, every moment in time that you've experienced, you have experienced a corresponding emotion or feeling that went along and is associated with that moment in time. And so one of the most powerful ideas I want to share with you is only one type of emotional energy can charge a cord at any given time. In other words, however that made you feel is charging the cord and has been charging the cord unless you become aware of this idea and learn how to change it for yourself, which I'm going to be teaching you on today's video. So this is where this gets very powerful and complex, is we've shared a lot of moments with a lot of people in our life. Those people who are closer to us, like our family and our friends and our loved ones, those hold a lot more emotional energy and weight because we have so many more experiences with those people. At the deepest level of our cells, we are programmed for survival. We're programmed to maintain living life the best that we can. So if anything happens to us that threatens our survival, we pay super close attention to this, and this is wired into us. And so in other words, if somebody hurts you or something hurts you, like a dog or an animal, and causes you pain or made you feel really scared or made you feel some type of powerfully negative emotion, you are programmed to remember that event at the deepest level in order to preserve your life and your being here. Let's just use the example of a dog bit you when you were younger. Let's just say you're 5 or 6 years old and a dog bites you on the arm and it terrified you. It hurt tremendously. It made you bleed, let's say, right? And so now ever since then, maybe you're 30 or 40 years old and you're terrified of dogs. Well, what actually happened there is in that moment in time when the dog bit you, you took a snapshot of that and it linked and associated serious threat to your life and pain and suffering to dogs. So now every other dog you see, even if it's a tiny little dog that would never hurt you, you're terrified of that thing because that's the link that is currently operating in your core programming. And so this happens in all different areas of our life in all different ways. If you had a death in the family and you lost a loved one, if somebody cheated on you and caused you tremendous emotional pain and betrayal, all different types of negative emotions exist, in other words, and are being linked to different circumstances and moments in time in our life. And so now what happens, the more powerful of an emotion that it made you feel, the deeper the root is in your mind garden here. Very deep-rooted seed got planted and it's going to grow into an oak tree eventually, unless we change our core programming around it. And that's what we're going to get into on today's video here. But I want to teach us all the way so you can see exactly what's happening for you. So in order to start changing the emotional cords that are connecting us to different people and different moments in time throughout our life, we have to start to understand life and people in general a little bit differently than the way we're looking at them now. And there's 4 powerful perspectives that you can start to entertain that'll allow you to start to look at things differently, which will allow you to unlock that emotional cord that's connecting you to that moment in time and actually start to replace it with a new emotion. Because remember, only one type of emotional energy can be charging up and powering any emotional cord at a time. For example, when the dog bit you, you generally have one type of emotion that you felt when that happened. And it maybe was like terrifying or super scared, or it hurt so bad, or whatever that was for you, right? There's one particular type of emotion it made you feel. And that's what's charging up your cable right now. And that energy is either negative or positive. Because you likely didn't feel like love or happiness or joy when you were getting bit. You felt some other emotion, right? That was negative. So you have 7 main chakras in your body. And I'm going to bring it back to this idea that emotions are energy in motion. In a perfectly healthy and healed human being body here, if you're perfectly at peace in your life, all of your 7 chakras are opened up in flowing energy as they should be. However, this is what's happening with most people. Is each one of these chakras is a processing center. It processes a particular type of emotional energy. Different emotions are different frequencies, and the lower survival level emotions are lower in frequency. The higher positive emotions are higher in energy. So joy, laughter, forgiveness, compassion, unconditional love, those all operate at a much higher frequency. Okay. Well, the type of emotion that you experienced gets processed in one of your chakra energy centers. Well, the way it's supposed to work is energy and emotions just get processed, and we're supposed to let them flow and then let them go. Well, what really happens, and it's a survival mechanism, like we talked about earlier in today's video, is because it was such a traumatic thing, or it made you feel like your life was being threatened, or it was very negative in your life, you remember it. And so now it gets stored up. And instead of being processed and let go, it's been processed and stored in that energy center. And it just so happens that each of the 7 energy centers corresponds to the organ system of the body. So, in other words, the root chakra, which is in between your hips, corresponds with reproduction. And like your sexual organs, you go up 1 or 2 and it corresponds with digestion. Up to your heart chakra, it corresponds with your circulatory system and your lungs. You keep going up to your throat chakra, and that's communication. You keep going up. Every chakra is associated with that actual organ system of the body. And so now it's not a coincidence if you have a disease in one of the organ systems of your body, because there's likely negative energy that's lived there for a long time, and it's been breaking down that part of your body over time. If you've been in survival and stress mode for a long time chronically, and you haven't learned how to get out of that fight, flight, or freeze mode for yourself in your life, and you've been living in those survival feelings of anxiety, stress, overwhelm, depression, whatever that looks like, if you physically don't feel good in your body's an emotional guidance system. It'll tell you the state of being you're in. Well, if you're feeling bad, like Eeyore, most of your life, I'd be willing to bet you have some type of ailment or inflammation or disease that's started to manifest in the body, and it corresponds with your genetic weakest link. In other words, the weakest area of your genetic code is your weakest link, and the cells in that area now break down faster. And now cancer starts to grow. Or if you happen to store fat more easily, obesity starts to take hold in your life. And it's not to say you shouldn't change your diet or the way you're eating if that's what's happening. But at the fundamental core, this emotional energy is actually the precursor to all of your health, actually. It's actually the precursor to all disease. And I'm going to be talking about that as we keep going here on my page here. But I want to just teach the fundamentals to you so you can start to make the shift for yourself immediately as quickly as possible. And so now we're going to put this all together, because this is exactly what's happening. So in one of your chakras, or maybe all of them, there's certain types of emotional energy that are being stored up there, and they're linked to moments in time that you've experienced throughout your life. And there's an emotional core that's attaching to that moment in time, and it's a survival-based mechanism that's occurring here. So in other words, every human being deals with this, and unless you learn about this, you likely have some emotional energy that's there that is stuck in your physical and energetic body. Well, I'm going to start to teach you some tools you can use right away to help you start to release this emotional energy, to free up your life force energy, to get your chakras moving way more effectively and flowing energy and life force energy way more effectively, so you could stop that old autopilot programming of survival mode and start to step into creation mode, which I talk about in another video as well. And I'll link out to that in the description of today's video as well for you. I want you guys to have all the tools and perspectives to change your life forever here. So the actual mechanism of what's happening in your life looks like this. You experienced something from your past, and if it was very negative or traumatic, it caused you to feel a very powerfully negative way in that area. And so now your mind has formed a memory, a very powerful memory associated with that event and moment in time. And now there's an emotion that's charging up the emotional cord that's connecting that experience together. And so now that is what's taken hold. And now it's been stored up in your body for however many years. Let's just say that happened 20, 30 years ago. Well, it still conjures up the same level of emotion because it's just a program that's playing out. It activates the emotion, triggers it. And the craziest part about this is that people are reflections of us. If you've happened to notice that there's a cycle playing out and certain types of people keep showing up in your life, maybe it's people you hate, people that annoy you. Well, that's not a coincidence. That is because the energy within you is actually attracting those types of people to you. And so now the present moment is a gift and it's an opportunity to see the energy that's within us. It's an opportunity to look inwards and see what emotional energy lives there in your body and where did it come from. And when you uncover this for yourself, you're going to start to break these cycles for yourself. And some of these cycles may be generational for you. In other words, it came from your parents or grandparents, and it just got passed down because energy just takes the path of least resistance. And thoughts, beliefs, and emotions are being taught from our parents down to us. And that's why we are the product of our environment, because we have learned to think a certain way and to feel a certain way and to have beliefs in our life that has created our life thus far. Well, from this point forward, by the way, you only ever exist in the present moment. So this present moment forward, you now get to challenge and change your core programming to the next level. And I'm going to teach you exactly how to do it. Are you ready? So this is going to be the actionable part of our video here. So really take notes and practice this over the next 21 days. And then let me know what happens in the comments below. Because I promise you, it's going to change your life forever. And I'm trying to get this out to a lot more people. So please share this video if you're finding value in it and you think this could help somebody else struggling. So there are 4 main perspectives that I teach my people. And if you can adopt one or all of these perspectives around the circumstance that is negatively charging you up and triggering you on a regular basis, then you're going to start to elevate your perspective on that situation. And it's going to free up that cord, allowing you to replace it with a new emotional energy to charge it up now. So in other words, the memory of that moment in time can be charged differently. And as Dr. Joe Dispenza says, the memory without the charge is wisdom. So the 4 perspectives are this. We are all human. We are all our 5-year-old self. Nothing is ever personal. And walk in the other person's shoes. So I'm going to repeat this because these are so powerful. If you can apply these ideas to any traumatic moment in time you've ever had in your life, any negative circumstance or experience you've ever had, you're going to start to be able to start to replace it using these 4 perspectives, okay? Everyone is human. Everyone is their 5-year-old self. Nothing is ever personal. And putting myself in the other person's shoes. Those 4 perspectives are going to start setting you free. So I want to share an experience I had with my bully because I really think it'll help you connect the dots here. I had a bully in middle school that tormented me, caused me pain and suffering for a couple years actually, until I stuck up for myself. But literally, he tortured me on a regular basis. He hit me in the stomach once after lunch and I threw up my lunch. He'd push me in the hall against the locker and I'd drop my books. He made me feel like a piece of garbage actually for a couple of years. Well, when I started doing this work for myself, I had so much anger and resentment and hatred towards this person, literally charged me up 20 years later. Right? So the memory of the torture I went through at that phase in my life was tied to an emotional cord that was powered by anger and hatred. And so what you do is you just simply check in with yourself and you ask yourself, all right, what is still triggering me? What happened to me that still triggers me to this day? right? What have you been through? Who do you still hate? What resentments do you still have and you're holding on to? Lots of people do lots of bad things to us, right? And it's easy to hold a resentment towards those people and not forgive them. But the idea is that's causing pain and suffering for you right now in your life. And they may or may not even remember that they bullied you or hurt you or did whatever they did to you or how much pain they caused you, in other words. And that's what I mean is we are all human and we know not what we do. So this is one of the perspectives we're going to start to talk about to allow you to start to change the narrative around whatever happened to you. So I did this work for myself and I'm starting to step into everybody's human. Everyone's their 5-year-old self. Nothing's ever personal. And we need to step into the other person's shoes to understand what's going on there. And so the very first thing you do is as soon as you conjure up whatever triggers you, if you think of a time in your life that really is emotional, you're going to bring it onto the screen of your mind. And in the moment, it's going to conjure up that emotion. And one of the last things I want to teach you on today's video is that every emotion has a physiological memory associated with it. And it has a physiological breathing pattern associated with it. And there are two general states of breathing, chest breathing and belly breathing. Well, chest breathing is usually associated with survival mode energy, negative emotions, anger, resentment, hatred, fear, anxiety, depression, all chest breathing that occurs there. Belly breathing is all the good feeling emotions, joy, fun, excitement, love, forgiveness, compassion, calm, at peace, all belly breathing. And so now what we do is we interrupt the physiological pattern and breathing pattern by simply coming back down to box belly breathing. And so how it works is you just breathe in through your nose slowly for 5 seconds, allow it to fill your belly and lungs with air. You pause at the top for 5 seconds, and then you exhale through your mouth like you're blowing through a straw for 5 to 7 seconds. And then you hold it at the bottom for a few seconds and repeat. And it's box breathing pattern. Well, once you do this for a few breaths with this image conjured up of this moment in time that caused you anxiety, panic, worry, anger, whatever it is. For me, it was anger and resentment and hatred towards my bully. Well, you bring it up. And now what we're doing here is we need to look at the person who caused you pain through one of those lenses and perspectives. Through everybody's human, everyone's their 5-year-old self. Nothing's ever personal, and we're going to walk in this person's shoes for a moment to understand them. And so I start to do this with my bully and circumstance that happened here, and I start to look at my bully as a human being. Well, the craziest part of this, and this may or may not even be true, but I'm pretty sure it is true because I remember one of my friends told me this, is that my bully used to get beat up by his dad, used to get abused at home, actually. He used to get locked out of his house and not allowed in until nighttime. In other words, abuse was occurring in this kid's home. And so you were like 10, 11 years old, and I'm starting to understand my bully from a new perspective. I'm starting to understand why he was bullying me because I'm starting to step into his shoes. And I couldn't imagine not feeling safe in my home, actually, right? And so now I'm starting to get empathy and compassion for this poor kid who wasn't even safe in his own home. And so now, no wonder he shows up to school and he felt like a victim. He was being bullied. And so now in order for him to feel more powerful, he's got to bully somebody else. This energy just simply repeats. Energy is energy is energy. Negative energy is just going to repeat and you're just going to channel it unless you become aware of this and unless you start breaking the cycle for yourself, which is what we're talking about on today's video. This is going to be one of the most powerful videos you ever watch in your entire life. And it's going to set you free forever when you understand what's happening here. Ready? Let's apply this together. Because this is literally what I did. So now I'm looking at my bully through this lens, and I feel so bad for this kid. I luckily had an amazing upbringing. I lost my dad at a young age. I was 15, but I at least had a nice, caring, loving dad for 15 years of my life. So that in and of itself is a huge blessing. So I'm stepping into these ideas as I'm thinking through this, and I'm starting to experience emotional energy for this kid who used to bully me. I have so much empathy and compassion for this kid. I now let go of the anger in that moment. And I swear to you, I like cried and laughed at the same time. This type of energy that came out of me, anger or whatever I was holding on to, I released it through my breath. By the way, your breath is the filtration system of your physical body via your lungs and your energetic body via emotion. In other words, you can actually process and filter out and let go of emotions through your breath. And once you change the physiological breathing pattern of any emotion, you come back to that powerful state of box belly breathing. it now allows you to let go of any other emotion that was there. In other words, the anger that took hold, now releases its tethers, and now you can let go of it more effectively. And so now I understood all four perspectives around my bully. It wasn't personal. I actually sat next to this kid. He was much bigger than me. I was much smaller. I was shy. I was introverted. In other words, I wouldn't have fought back. Energy takes a path of least resistance all the time. That's a universal law. So who was his path of least resistance? Me. I sat next to him. I was shy. I was introverted. I was smaller. I was totally an easy candidate for being bullied. There you go. Until I stood up for myself, though. So it was a blessing in disguise because that bully taught me how to be more confident. And eventually I stood up to him and he stopped bullying me. And he taught me a beautiful life lesson on how to be self-confident and stand up for myself. So there's always a positive in every negative. It's just up to us to find it. There's always a lesson to be had. We have to learn it. That's what life is all about. And that's why I can't wait to teach this to a lot more people. And so now, ever since then, the emotional cords that tied me and my bully together actually got replaced from anger and hatred to love, empathy, and forgiveness and compassion. Those are some of the highest levels of emotions you can replace something with. If you can understand the person is just human. This poor kid was probably 5 years old being abused, right? And that's all he's ever known. No wonder why he was bullying me. I get it. I understood it from a new perspective. And I was able to let go of that anger and hatred. And now, ever since then, I haven't really been angry in my life because even when somebody does make me mad, I start to apply these principles and I let go of it. I allow the emotion to flow and then let it go. And now I don't hold on to any anger or resentment. I understand people to the next level. And now I'm living the life of my dreams. And it's next level. Everyone always asks me, how are you this positive? Because I've learned how to actually release my own emotional energy. I have evolved my perspective and understanding. I've become enlightened on how this human being operating system actually works. And that's why I can't wait to teach us to the next level through my new program, which I'm calling You 2.0. It is going to be spectacular. I cannot wait to get this out to the world. It's basically like self-therapy, but without the stigma of therapy. It's just understanding this is how you operate and how do you just get to the core of it and release it for yourself. And now it changes every present moment from this point forward. And now you're not carrying around all that negative emotional energy within your body. And now what happens is that was taking away and pulling from your life force energy on a daily basis. And it was degrading your physical body and being, actually causing disease in your body because your body's just trying to keep homeostasis, keeping you balanced and living. Well, it's going to start to degrade your physical body if your energetic body runs out of energy every day. And so now if you start to replace these negative emotions, you let go of anger, resentment, hatred, jealousy, whatever's going on inside of your body, you let go of it. That emotional energy that was stored up, it's been culminated and tied to that this whole time. Well, now you release it back and it adds to your life force energy. So now you're replenishing your life force energy. You're learning about how important your state of being is and how your thoughts are causing you to feel a certain way, and how you feel is causing you to be in a state of energy that's motivating you into an action. And every action creates a result, and every result fortifies and reinforces the circumstance and actually attracts the circumstances coming into your life. So now if you change this cycle for yourself, you let go of the anger, hatred, resentment, whatever negativities within your body forever. Not just a band-aid approach here. We're gaining a new perspective on the situation that happened. We're looking at it for what it is. We're all human. We are all worthy and deserving of being forgiven. The more people that understand this, the more love and compassion will come out of it and understanding will come out of it. So with that, I hope this video serves you amazingly well in your life. Listen into this video over and over again until you understand the concepts in it. Start taking the reins of your life and practicing this on a regular basis. And let me know if you run into any challenges with this information, and I'd love to help you out. With that, I hope you have an amazing rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next video.